Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear brothers and sisters and viewers of IQRA TV, welcome to another edition of Real Talk, the program that comes to you week in, week out, bringing you hopefully issues of interest that are pertain to our community and important for members of the Muslim community in particular. Today I want to talk about the forthcoming election. The 12th of December, as everybody should know by now, is a very important date in this country's democratic process. There's a general election which has been called by the current government, and this election in particular, of all the elections, including all the ones that I've been involved in my lifetime, is particularly important for the issues that are now emerging from all the political parties. And there is issues around Brexit, there's issues about multiculturalism, there's issues about faith, etc. That every one of these issues confront us and has an impact on our lives on a day-to-day basis. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are thinking, well, this is not an issue that confronts us, has anything to do with my life. But this year in particular, with everything that is going on, particularly around Islamophobia, and particularly about the political presence of the parties and where they stand on the Muslim community, it is absolutely vital that we understand that by not voting and not going out, the impact that could have on the future of Muslims in this country across all our lives, from young people in schools and education to people accessing health service, etc., and employment as well. So the future of our community is at stake at this moment in time, and one of the things I want to talk about is the importance of the Muslim community to go out and vote. Today I have, as usual, some very eminent people, most of whom you will know because they've been guests on my program before. But I particularly like to welcome Nahid Sheikh from Bradford for Bradford Organization. First time she's been here. Assalamu alaikum, Nahid. Thank you for coming. And thank you for being with us tonight. I also have Ishtiaq Ahmed, a very familiar friend of IQRA TV and particularly this program. Ishtiaq has graced me many, many times on a number of issues, including Islamophobia, issues around mental health issues and things like that. And then also I have Maulana Hayat Sahab, who again does not need any introduction to the viewers of IQRA TV. He's one of our co-presenters. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to all of you. Thank you for coming and thank you for joining me on this occasion. Maulana, I'll start with you. I remember a time when some of the ulama used to say that vote karna haram hai. Right? I remember not too many years ago actually, maybe even 15 years ago, we should not be taking part in the democratic process of this nation. Now obviously a lot of people, including myself, felt that was not the correct advice. Where do you stand on this issue about Muslims and voting in this country?
Personally, it's a very extreme position to say not to vote. So that's the first thing I want to clear up. That's a very extreme position, saying that you cannot vote or you shouldn't vote. See, voting by its nature, let me give you an example. A compromise is of three things. First of all, it's like shahadat. Shahadat means you are testifying to a person's capabilities. That in your eye, from the a group of people who are candidates, who do you see is the most able to effect change? So a compromise of three things. First of all, it's a gawai, which means you're testifying that you believe this person is one of the foremost person to effect change. Number one. Number two, it's like wakalat. Wakalat means that he is your agent to effect change. So you can't effect change. You are not running for a political party or XYZ, or not to that. You're not going for an MP. So you are choosing him to be your wakil, your ambassador, your representative, which is what MP is. And the third thing is, it's like sifarish. Sifarish means intercession. So he will then intercede on behalf of his constituency. So these three things are basically the bottom line in voting. And the second important thing is that, the Hadith Sharif is very clear that sometime voting becomes an obligation. I'll explain to you. Let's say we know what's happening now, and Men has done a lot of work on this, Islamophobia, the APPP definition of Islamophobia, etc. There's so many things that need to be done from a point of justice. Now the hadith is Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyiru biyadihi fa lam yastati' fa بِلِسَانِهِ فَإِلَّمْ يَسْتَطِعْ بِقَلْبِهِ وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. Long hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says that whoever sees an evil act, فَلْيُغَيِّرْ بِيَدِهِ, he should change with his hands. And if he can't do so, for whatever reason, he should employ his tongue. And if he still can't do so, he should employ his heart and think bad of it in his heart. And this is the lowest level of iman. Now, when I say obligation, so if you see evil happening, if you are being stopped in certain places because of your attire, or ladies are being vilified because of their attire, or many Islamophobic things are happening, how can you effect change? One person can't do much, but a political party can do a lot more. So you have obligation to then effect that party to do so, and you can only do so if it wins an amount of seats, etc. So this is obligation, but sometimes it's not an obligation. And how is it not obligation? Is when the candidates that are lined up, from them candidates, there's a masla of taqleel al-shar. Taqleel al-shar means that where the nuqsan or the detriment is the least. So you got 5 people, they're not the best of the bunch, but one of the people are the least damaging to our interest. So then you vote for him. But sometimes even that doesn't occur. And at that point, there's no obligation, because none of these people can help you in any shape, way or form, and there's not even a taqleel al-shar issue there. So my position is that voting is very, very, very important. And as you mentioned, in this day and age, in this election, you mentioned it's a very important for UK. It's actually being watched throughout the world, and see how the far right and the far, the left, how they will, this is a very, very far left kind of feel with the Labour Party, if I can say so.
Well, thank you very much for that clarification. I mean, even Maulana Salim Dorat has issued a statement, a little booklet. Now, I'm sure you will have heard, I don't know whether you've seen it or not. And even he, I think, is encouraging people to go out and vote, and he's set some standards as to what they should be looking at. So I think that clarification for our Muslim brothers and sisters is particularly important. I'm grateful for that. Nahid Sheikh, I mean, obviously you're a Bradford person.
Yes.
Were you born in Bradford? You've grown up in Bradford. Are you politically active in the Bradford faith community, or a wider community?
Not completely, but I am kind of in local community.
Yes.
So I'm part of a organisation that joined with councillors to help Bradford get better.
Right.
So therefore, we like to see and vote for the person that will help us more, and we like to see more people come out.
What are the type of issues that you feel are important in this particular election for the Muslim community of Bradford?
Support, really. We need to get support from everywhere we possibly can in all of the fields that we can. Like education is really important for us, especially our children. We need to have the right kind of education, right kind of people coming into the education and supporting them, and the funds for it as well. And transport is really, really important, because majority of the transport at the moment is very limited and very expensive, and we need more money putting into education and transport.
Thank you very much for that. I mean, Ishtiyaq, as my viewers will know, I have tremendous respect for Ishtiyaq. Ishtiyaq has fought for social justice and equality and justice for more than 35 years of his life, still continues to do so, and he has been at the forefront of the fight for equality and justice, and particularly for the Muslim community, not just in Bradford, but across the whole of the country and also internationally. Ishtiyaq, do you feel that this election is different, and the election this year is different to what we've seen in the past, and how, in your opinion, is the importance of this particular election for the Muslim community?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Number one thing that I would like to say is that people must go and vote. Their voice must be heard.
Right.
Their presence must be felt. There are many constituencies up and down the country in which Muslims actually hold a decisive vote. They can determine the outcome. So I think it's important that we as Muslim community who are striving for a position of dignity and respect in this country, we are part of the society. Our future generations are part of the society. It's important that we take part and full part in the democratic process of this country. And general election is that democratic process. So we must go out and vote. That's one thing.
Yeah, totally agree with you. Yes.
There are a number of issues, and issues around Brexit is very important. I think many of us, and I also talk to or speak to other minority communities. Okay, I think being part of Europe, being part of a wider society, is much closer to the sentiments of Islam and the universality of Muslim community and our deen than being confined to an island. Yeah, so I am very much a Remainer.
Right.
Yeah, and I think the outcome of this elections will determine the directions in which Britain will go in terms of either being part of Europe or not being part of Europe or being partially part of Europe. Yeah, and it impacts. I have friends from the Muslim community who have educated here, are working in Germany, are working in France, in working in other parts of the country. Something it opened us. For that, Europe opens up opportunities for us, and I think it's important for us to have that expanding education, economic. That's important, and NHS is very important for us. Education, unfortunately, the Muslim community nationally is lagging behind in terms of education. Something there are a whole variety of reasons why that may be the case, but one of those is investment. Yeah, I think particularly in a city like Bradford, investment in education has shrinked.
And investment, that is because you feel there's a north-side divide, is there?
Yeah, yeah, and also I think the government's priorities have not been inner city areas. It's not been those areas where our communities predominantly resides. NHS is very important. We are still a very economically very poor community. We are dependent on these facilities and services, and I think it was so education, NHS, Brexit, a whole raft of reasons why I think we as a community need to be there. Of course, in your introduction you talked about Islamophobia, you talked about racism, you talked about discrimination. Maulanas have very eloquently actually alluded to the threat of right-wing extremism against the Muslim community. Yeah, these are issues which directly affect us, our children and our families, and I think it's important that we get out and vote.
And the Maulana also alluded to the language that is being used at this moment in time against Muslims, particularly some of the language which has been used by our current Prime Minister describing Muslim women, for example, as letterboxes and post, and bank robbers.
Senior politicians somehow feel that they can say anything and get away with, and there is no one to hold them accountable. And I think we as a community need to stand up and say, look,
he's been asked on a number of occasions on national television, both on BBC and ITV, to ask him whether he's willing to apologize, and he has not directly given any apology at all. And we've seen how he's responded to that, and I think that is to a certain extent is one of the issues that I think a lot of Muslims are contending with, even those who are part of a particular that particular political party. I mean, as Ishtiaq says, when we have political parties, and I'm not just saying the Conservative Party or the other party, Brexit Party or whoever they may be, the extreme right wing, etc. And remember, there are many political parties standing. You've got Labour, you've got Conservative, you've got Liberal Democrats, you've got the Green Party, you've got the Brexit Party, and there are other independents, etc. And please make sure you look at your own constituency to see who is standing, because in some cases there'll be other people representing other interests who might be standing there as well. But the important issue is, as Maulana says, we need to look at who provides the best opportunity for the Muslim community, who responds more to the needs of the Muslim community as opposed to the other people. Now, Naheed, in terms of the Muslim women, do you talk to Muslim women about participating in the democratic process, and how are they sort of relating to these issues?
I have spoken to quite a lot of people, but majority of women don't really understand politics very much, I think, because they've not taken the time out, or they're too busy with their families, and I don't think they understand fully what's going on. Right. So that's lacking in education in the women part. So they need to go out and find out for themselves as to what the parties are doing for them and what's best for them, or even just talk to people, see what other people's opinions are, and go and research themselves. But I think it's really because they're so busy in their own lives and their own families, they don't really have the time, or they don't bother with it too much. They do need to make a lot more effort, because every vote counts, especially the women and the young teenagers who've just become 18 who can now start voting. It's really important for them to go out and start voting, because their vote counts as well as everyone else. Every single person has a right to know who they are electing, who's going to be there for them.
Have you spoke to young people, and have you?
I have. I've got.
What are they saying?
Well, they're not sure themselves. All they hear is Brexit, Brexit, Brexit. They've not heard anything else but Brexit in the media most of the time. So they don't really know what the other parties are doing for them or what they're willing to do. All they know is that's Brexit, because that's too much in the limelight at the moment.
It goes back to what Ishtiyaq was saying about there's more than Brexit at stake here at this moment in time.
My fear is that a lot of young people, newly registered voters, may decide not to vote. Yeah, because they are disillusioned.
Yes.
Because as Nahid has said, that they really don't understand the broader picture. I think it's important that our young people do vote, okay, and make an effort, because these young people are the future leaders of our communities. And I think it's important that their presence and their voice is actually felt and heard. So I think, I urge my young friends. I was talking to a group of young people this afternoon, and I made a plea to them. Please, it's important that if you're registered, if you are entitled to vote, get out and vote. Your voice matters.
Exactly,
yeah, and your voice matters, because if you're talking about education, if you're talking about health, if you're talking about services and provision for young people, if you're talking about employment opportunities, training opportunities, whatever, those are the issues which directly affect our young people today, and they will affect them for the next 4 years or 10 years.
I agree.
Okay, and I think it's important.
Definitely.
It's important. Something. So yes, Brexit is there, but I think we also need to look at other issues that directly, Islamophobia, for example.
Exactly.
No political parties is observed of Islamophobia. We find Islamophobia in all political parties, in some form or shape. Okay, and as Maulana said, we're choosing from probably the best amongst the worst in that sense. So I think it's important.
Can I just come in there?
Yes, by all means.
Just mentioning, just a few things really. Sister Nahid mentioned the education. I was reading a few days ago, 7 billion. Every year of the education budget, every year 7 billion of the education budget. Can you imagine 7 billion? What impact it has. But what I wanted to say was that you've heard of MEND, haven't you? MEND are like a think tank, mashallah, great people, very very phenomenal think tank, and they've done a lot of hard work. They've made a kind of a league table. So what these guys have done is that they've had their kind of policy pledges, and they've asked all the political parties to measure up. So I want to mention a few things. First of all, they've got 8 pledges. So first of all, there was racial and religious equality, youth education, labour market, media broadcasting, criminal justice, security and counter-terrorism, political engagement and minority rights. Now they have, there's too much to go through, but let me give you an example. The APPG definition of Islamophobia, which has been adopted by all the parties apart from the Conservative Party, if I'm not mistaken. Okay? Now, this is work in process, but it has such an important impact going forward on Muslim rights. Okay. Now, same thing with criminal justice. Investigate structural Islamophobia within the criminal justice system massively. Yeah. And the third thing I want to mention from these things is that education, not just 7 billion that's been taken away, but look, prioritizing PSHE to teach Islamophobia in the schools. Now we are not here for, this is our world. We live here. We contribute to this country. We wish it the best. Now our kids, when we're in our graves, Allah Ta'ala fill them with lights, inshallah, and Allah make our children, strong Muslims. When we're in our graves, we want our children to be practicing Muslims. We do.
Inshallah.
Yeah. So Islamophobia is now behind every tree and every rock. It's rife. We know that. Or we're led to believe that anyway, whether that's the truth or not. We experience it all the time. So prioritizing PSHE, the lesson to teach about Islamophobia, will have a great impact on the children who, not just Muslim children obviously, but the children who will reside in the UK.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Jewish community have managed to get the Holocaust being taught as part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And we need
that's
to
the point
sure,
I'm making. So
and this is what we need to do as well.
So
just coming back on that, Maulana, because we'll be going for a break very soon. as we've been said, I mean, I'm sure we'll have all have seen, and you will have seen as well, the Hindu community making great effort to try and mobilize the Hindu community into voting in a particular way because of the issue of Kashmir more than anything else. Are the Muslim community in Bradford, for example, or the imams showing a lead to the people of Bradford in saying, you know, you should vote, etc.?
I think the situation in Bradford is slightly different.
Right.
Yeah. In Bradford, we have 3 members of parliament, 2 Muslims, and one a Labour Party, a white woman. And at this moment, the mood of the city seems to be that both Muslim candidates will be successfully returned. That's Imran Hussain and Nasha. I think Judith Kamen, who's in also I think she will be returned as well as a Labour. So the mood is that I think the Bradford voters will predominantly go for.
Are the Muslim people going to go out and vote?
Well, that's the danger.
That's the
no,
key
that's
issue.
the danger.
Yeah.
Danger is that if we believe that these candidates will be successful,
Yes.
then you could become complacent.
Exactly.
And people will not. And I think it's important people will vote. A, them to get re-elected. Yeah. But B, also to make sure. I think we need to actually make our presence and voice felt.
I'm going to have to stop you there because we're going for a break at the moment. I hope you found this debate sort of interesting so far. When we come back, I forgot to mention at the beginning, and I'm sure you probably know this, I don't need to mention it. If anybody wants to ring in and share their thoughts, please ring in on 01274 214 299, and I'm sure we'd be happy to hear from you as well. In the meantime, don't go away. Make yourself tea, coffee, faluda, whatever it is, and we'll be back with you soon, inshallah. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.